Hello folks, this is going to be an overview of the steps to build to create your tower. If you are on this step, you have previously done the decision matrix, you've selected the design that is going to work for you, and you are ready to build the design that sort of won that evaluation that you did in that step. So just to quickly summarize, what you need to have available to do this step is you need the five pieces of wood that were provided for you to pick up, as well as a straight edge that'll help with the drawing, something to draw with, something to draw on 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and then some type of glue. Any type of glue will work. It just needs to, even like I had some really cheap school glue that I put out if people needed it. Stick glue is the only one that's questionable. Not saying it won't work, but I would probably go for something more of a liquid glue. So we are on this step, and the structure we're going to make, we want it to be 8.5 by 11 inches tall, which is the height of this part of the paper, the distance on this part of the paper. And that is on purpose because I don't know if people have rulers necessarily, but hopefully you can find just a standard piece of printed paper. It can even be the back of something that you get in the mail kind of thing. So the type of structures we're going to set up, though, they're going to be triangular prisms, and that's so we can use this space to make 3 different panels, basically, and then we're going to take those panels, put them together in a triangle, and then that's going to be our structure. So to get this piece of paper folded into thirds without using a ruler, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of fold it into an S. There's a couple different ways to do this. So one way is folding it into an S and then trying to make the ends, so these are the paper ends, line up with the fold over bits there. And if I do that, you can see I have 1/3. I have like 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. So there's the method of making that kind of zigzag S. And then to make the lines go down straight, kind of once, I like to crimp just in the corners just so I know where my dividers are. I check it, make sure that looks right. And then what I'm going to do is to make this go straight across, I'm going to bring the paper over, and this edge needs to line up with this edge. So on my crease, it's going to fold over. Those 2 pieces need to be perfectly lined up, perfectly. And then I'm going to take my fingers and hold this down. So those 2 are perfectly on top of each other. And this hand is clamping that down so this doesn't move, because my other hand is going to come and just along that edge crease it. And then that other edge is now perfectly lined up on the other side. So now I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I'll fold it on that crease that I created when I did the S. And I'm going to line that edge along the top so it's even, pinch it down with one hand, the other hand's just going to go straight down, and it'll line up on the other end. So now I have a piece of paper that is folded into thirds, and these thirds are all the same. If I fold it in half like that, or so in thirds, they should all cover each other up pretty much perfectly. There's maybe like just the tiniest little sliver that's sticking out around there, but that's not going to be a big deal. So getting your paper folded into thirds is going to be the first step. I'm going to try to flatten this a little bit, but I want to know where those are so I can use my straight edge to draw along that crease on the paper. Another way you could cheat with trying to figure out the dividers is if you do get something in the mail that's already folded in thirds. A lot of times it's folded in thirds by like a machine or something, or a really efficient person. So it may already be in perfect thirds for you. So here are the 3 spaces that I have to draw my tower. So the structure you're going to draw in each of them will be identical. I'm going to draw something really quickly that isn't going to necessarily work. So let me see, what can I draw that won't work the best? I don't like people copying my stuff. All right, let's just say I want to do just straight lines up and down. By the way, this is a terrible design. and I'm doing that on purpose because people tend to copy me whenever I do an example. So here is some verticals, and maybe I'm going to say, okay, I want to have, you know, something in the middle here. Okay, there is my single terrible structure. So along the top edge and along the bottom edge and along the side edge and the other side edge, we're going to assume that you are going to have like a piece of balsa wood. So there's going to be a piece of balsa wood like there, along the bottom and along the top. So you're already assuming there's kind of a box around this, and then you're drawing the internal parts that are going to support the structure. So you want each of them to be the same. And to do that, you know, if you're trying to keep things level, maybe you go across as best you can with a ruler to keep things level. But you're going to have the same design 3 times. So each of those designs will be a separate thing you're going to cut out with the sticks, and you'll put it onto the paper. So let me show you the steps after you're done. So assuming you've done all 3, what you're going to do is you can use scissors to do this. You can use fingernails for this very small balsa wood. So what you'll do though is I would say the best way to do this, line it up on the page and then mark where you want to cut it, and then just use like scissors or whatever to cut through it. The sharper the scissors are you have, the less crushed that edge will be. I do have specific cutters for this, but obviously we're not together, so we're not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead really quickly and do the rest of these. Okay, so the method, I've got all these cut out, and what I'm going to do is I want to make sure I kind of keep this to its own side of the line here. There's different ways to do the joints for these. The way that I'm going to kind of show you here is the easiest way, because it's the way that needs the least. It's going to work out, I think, the fastest and easiest for you. So what I have here is I have these sitting on top of each other. Another way to do it is you could have them going into each other like that. Generally, to get a good joint going that way, it's going to require a better cut. But because people are going to be using whatever they have available, these cuts might not be the cleanest. So I'm having designs that go on top of each other. So there's ways to do that, even stacking like 3 tall or whatever if you need to make like X's or triangles happen. So that's acceptable, and that's acceptable. You can also cut these at angles. So if I did have a piece that was coming at an angle, if I drew my line kind of lined up with one of my lines on the paper, I could cut that and have this at an angle so that when it sits in there, it can be at an angle if it's interior. Or if I just cut it at a 90-degree angle, just straight across, I can go on top of it like that. Now, in terms of gluing, and just before anyone asks, the Band-Aid on my finger is not from a tower structure construction accident. It's from rock climbing. But anyways, I don't want comments going, wow, this is a dangerous project. Look, he's even injured. So I've just got, this is the same glue, it's just in an unmarked bottle. So I don't get sued by anonymous glue companies. So I'm going to actually glue this to the paper, and you can do this over multiple days because you might have to do one of them at a time, because you really don't want that to accidentally glue the two ones next to each other together. So you could do this one and then this one and then do the middle one later, just as you're gluing. Just be aware of what you're gluing onto. So I like to just, the smallest amount of glue is just going to keep it from like blowing off the table. So one of them is glued down, the other ones aren't, but where it was glued, it kind of stayed. So I might just put just a little bit of glue. You are going to have to tear off the paper, and it is going to be a very delicate process to tear it off. But you can glue it to the paper. I think that is a good way to get it, kind of keep it in place initially. But the amount of glue I'm using is just very small on each of those dots. And you're not going to use much glue on any of these spots. The amount of glue that I provided should be good for not only this project, but also like 2 others later on. So you want to make sure you're not using up all your glue, because this really doesn't need that much. So I'm keeping my beam here just inside of that line, and then going across. I can put a dot there, and just let that sit on top of it. So let me just quickly finish this up, and I'll point out a few more things, and then you can figure out what you want to do. Okay, so some of these are sort of leaning up off the table. So what I would do if I was to be doing this at home is I would find something flat that I don't really mind if it gets a little bit of glue on it, and I would just put it on top of it just to keep some pressure down on the structure, and just making sure everything is in place before you leave it and let the glue dry. If you have to do one of these sections at a time, that's totally fine. If you fold it into thirds and do a couple different pages, you could even do like one of these per sheet of paper, or you could do like one and then this one and this one. You'll have the time to do like one a day if you really have to do it that way. But if I leave it like this, and again, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible design. Don't do this design. In fact, if you do this design, I will take off points and I will be sad. So if you leave this and let it dry, this will be its own kind of, it'll stay together. And then what you'll have to do is take the paper off. But I can't do that right now because I don't have a finished one to show you. So for now, this is where you're at to construct each of the 3 panels. When you are done, you will have to glue them together in sort of a triangular shape, and I'll have some tips on that in a later video. So best of luck with this step. Let me know if you have any questions.